Tonight, we're exploring a collection of real-life horror stories that hit a little too close to home. Literally. These aren't tales of haunted mansions or faraway places. These are domestic horrors, moments of fear that unfolded in the one place we all expect to feel safe, our own homes. In this video, you'll hear 3 spine-chilling stories of ordinary people who found themselves in extraordinary and terrifying situations. From strange noises in the attic to an intruder lurking just a little too close. These stories will make you double-check your locks tonight. So, dim the lights, grab a blanket, and let's get into it. But first, if you're a fan of creepy content and love a good scare, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. That way, you'll never miss a story. Now, let's dive into our first tale, a seemingly quiet evening disrupted by a strange and relentless sound. Story 1. The Scraping Sound. It was an ordinary Wednesday evening when Jack found himself standing in his modest kitchen, chopping vegetables for a quick stir-fry. The clock on the wall ticked lazily towards 7 p.m., and the familiar hum of his fridge filled the quiet. Jack had moved into this small, 2-story house just 3 months earlier. It wasn't the fanciest place, but it was cozy and affordable, a perfect starter home. Outside, the late autumn wind rustled the bare branches of the trees, casting long shadows on the kitchen walls. Jack loved this time of year. There was something comforting about curling up with a good Netflix show while the wind howled outside. Tonight was no different. As he stirred the vegetables, a faint sound reached his ears, a soft, almost imperceptible scrape. He paused, knife hovering over the cutting board. The sound was subtle, like nails dragging against wood, but distant. At first, he dismissed it as just another house noise. Old homes creak and groan, especially as temperatures drop. Shaking his head, Jack turned his attention back to the task at hand. But the sound didn't stop. By the time Jack settled on the couch with his plate of stir-fry and fired up Netflix, the noise had grown louder. It was no longer distant. Instead, it seemed to echo through the walls of the house, an intermittent scraping sound that made his skin crawl. Probably the wind, he muttered, turning up the volume. He tried to focus on the episode, but the sound was relentless. Every few minutes, there it was again, a low, grating noise that seemed to travel from one corner of the house to another. Jack's annoyance grew. Pausing the show, he sat in silence, trying to pinpoint the source of the noise. It didn't sound like something mechanical. It wasn't the heater or the pipes. It was organic, deliberate, like someone, or something, dragging something heavy across a wooden floor. The thought sent a shiver down his spine. Jack decided to investigate. Grabbing his phone and a flashlight, he started with the first floor, checking every corner, every room. The sound seemed to stop whenever he moved, as if it were playing a cruel game of hide and seek. Eventually, he made his way upstairs. The noise grew louder, almost vibrating through the walls. The hallway leading to the attic door felt colder than the rest of the house, the air heavy with a strange, metallic smell. Jack's heart pounded as he aimed his flashlight at the attic door. He hadn't been up there since moving in. The attic was small, cramped, and filled with boxes left by the previous owners. The thought of someone, or something, being up there now sent a cold wave of dread through him. Jack hesitated before pulling the cord to lower the attic ladder. The scraping stopped abruptly, plunging the house into an eerie silence. The absence of sound was almost worse. Gathering his courage, Jack climbed the ladder, flashlight gripped tightly in one hand. The attic was as he remembered, dusty, cluttered, and unremarkable. The beam of his flashlight swept over old boxes, a broken chair, and cobweb-covered beams. There was nothing here. No sign of movement, no sign of the noise. He turned to climb back down when a glint of light caught his eye. At the far end of the attic, near a small, grimy window, something reflected the beam of his flashlight. Jack moved closer, heart pounding in his chest. It was a small, metallic object, a piece of a mirror propped up against the wall. And then he saw it, the faint outline of a footprint in the dust near the mirror. Jack froze, the flashlight trembling in his hand. He was the only one who had been in this house, or so he thought. He backed away slowly, not daring to turn his back on the attic. The ladder creaked as he descended, each step feeling heavier than the last. Once back on the second floor, he pulled the ladder up and shut the attic door with a slam. He needed to call someone. Dialing 911, Jack explained the situation to the operator, his voice shaking as he described the noise, the mirror, and the footprint. The operator assured him that officers were on their way and advised him to stay on the line. As Jack waited, the scraping sound returned, louder and more frantic. It wasn't coming from the attic anymore. It was moving. He could hear it above the kitchen now, as if something, or someone, was crawling through the spaces between the walls. His breath came in shallow gasps as he huddled in the living room, clutching a heavy wrench he had grabbed from the toolbox. The sound stopped again, and for a brief moment, there was silence. Then came the banging. It was coming from the attic door. When the police arrived, they found Jack sitting in the driveway, pale and trembling. He explained everything as they entered the house to investigate. Jack stayed outside, the thought of stepping back into the house unbearable. The officers emerged after what felt like an eternity. Their faces were grim as they recounted what they found. The attic showed signs of recent habitation, food wrappers, a sleeping bag, and crude carvings etched into the wooden beams. The carvings were strange, almost ritualistic, depicting eyes and cryptic symbols. Whoever had been living there had been using the attic window as an entry and exit point, climbing onto the roof and dropping down into the backyard. The officers reassured Jack that there was no immediate danger, but their words felt hollow. The thought of someone living above him, watching him, and moving through his walls was too much to bear. That night, Jack didn't sleep. He couldn't. He moved out 2 weeks later. To this day, he refuses to watch Netflix alone. Story 2. The Open Door. The wind howled through the barren trees as the headlights of the moving truck illuminated the long driveway. The house at the end seemed to appear out of nowhere, its silhouette looming in the moonlight like a forgotten relic. For young Emma and her family, the move to the countryside was supposed to be a fresh start, a chance to escape the chaos of the city and live somewhere quieter, more peaceful. At least, that was the plan. The house was old but charming. 2 stories, a wide porch, and a sprawling yard that stretched into the woods. Emma, just 12 years old at the time, wasn't as thrilled as her parents. She missed her friends, the sound of cars honking outside her window, and most of all, the familiarity of home. The only comfort in this new chapter of her life was Max, the family dog. A loyal golden retriever with a knack for sensing trouble, Max had been with them since Emma was 6. The dog had been her constant companion, and she felt safe knowing he'd be by her side. The first few months passed uneventfully. Emma's days were spent exploring the woods behind the house and playing fetch with Max in the yard. The nights, however, were a different story. The house had a way of coming alive after dark. Strange creaks echoed through the hallways, and the wind seemed to whistle through cracks that Emma couldn't find during the day. She chalked it up to the house settling and tried not to let her imagination get the best of her. One night, however, Emma awoke to Max growling at the foot of her bed. "Max," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the low rumble of his growl. The dog was staring at the bedroom door, his ears pinned back and his body tense. Emma felt her heart quicken as she sat up in bed. "What is it, boy?" Max didn't move. He didn't bark. He just kept staring. Summoning her courage, Emma climbed out of bed and approached the door, her bare feet cold against the hardwood floor. She opened it slowly, the hinges letting out a soft creak. The hallway was dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of the moon through a window at the far end. Nothing seemed out of place. The next morning, Emma told her parents about Max's behavior. They laughed it off, assuring her that it was probably just a raccoon outside or the sound of the wind spooking him. But Max continued acting strangely in the days that followed. He'd sit at the bottom of the basement stairs, growling softly, or stare at the back door as if expecting someone to walk through it. Emma started to feel uneasy in the house. One evening, after locking up for the night, Emma joined her parents in the living room to watch a movie. Max lay curled up on the rug, seemingly at ease for the first time in days. Emma began to relax. Halfway through the movie, however, she noticed something strange. The basement door, which she had definitely closed and locked, was slightly ajar. "Did you go into the basement?" she asked her dad, pointing at the door. "No," he replied, frowning. "I locked it earlier." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. Her dad got up to investigate, muttering something about faulty locks. He closed the door and tested the handle, making sure it was secure. "It's fine," he said, returning to the couch. But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. That night, she lay in bed wide awake, her ears straining for any sound out of the ordinary. Around midnight, she heard it, the faint creak of a door opening. Her breath caught in her throat as she sat up in bed. Max was already awake, standing near the door with his hackles raised. "Stay here," she whispered, though she knew he wouldn't. She grabbed the flashlight from her nightstand and crept out into the hallway, Max following close behind. The basement door was wide open. Emma's heart raced as she approached the doorway, the beam of her flashlight trembling slightly in her hand. The air near the basement felt colder, as if the darkness below was exhaling. She took a deep breath and called out, "Is someone there?" No answer. She considered waking her parents, but didn't want to sound paranoid. Gathering her courage, she began descending the wooden stairs, each step creaking beneath her weight. Max followed, his growls low and steady. The basement was as it always was, dim, cluttered, and uninviting. Old furniture and boxes filled the space, casting long shadows that seemed to shift under the flashlight's beam. But then she saw it. In the dust on the floor, there were footprints. They led from the base of the stairs to the far wall, where an old window had been left slightly open. Emma's stomach turned. Someone had been inside the house. She backed up the stairs quickly, closing the basement door behind her and locking it again. This time, she went straight to her parents, waking them and telling them everything she had seen. Her dad grabbed a baseball bat and went to check the basement himself while her mom called the police. When the officers arrived, they confirmed what Emma had suspected. There was evidence of someone entering through the basement window. The footprints led to the stairs, but there were no signs of anyone still in the house. Nothing had been stolen, and there was no indication of how long the intruder had been there. "Could be a drifter," one officer suggested. "They sometimes use basements or attics for shelter." The explanation didn't comfort Emma. Over the next few weeks, the family added locks to every door and window, but the sense of unease lingered. Emma found herself double-checking every lock before bed and sleeping with Max at her side. One night, as she was locking up, she noticed something chilling. The back door, which had always been secure, was unlocked. She froze, her hand hovering over the doorknob. Turning slowly, she saw Max standing in the hallway, his eyes fixed on the door. He wasn't growling this time. Instead, he whimpered softly, his tail tucked between his legs. Emma called her parents, and once again, the police were summoned. This time, they found something new, scratches on the inside of the basement door, as if someone had been trying to get out. That was the last straw for Emma's parents. Within a month, they sold the house and moved back to the city. For years after, Emma would think about the house and the strange events that had unfolded there. She never found out who, or what, had been opening the doors, but she couldn't shake the feeling that whoever it was hadn't been a drifter looking for shelter. They had been watching, waiting, and that thought was more terrifying than anything else. Story 3. The Facebook Intruder. The room was dimly lit, the soft glow of a laptop screen casting shadows on the walls. Mark leaned back in his chair, scrolling aimlessly through Facebook. It was a quiet Friday night, the kind he usually enjoyed. The work week had been grueling, and he was looking forward to unwinding with a movie and maybe some popcorn. Mark wasn't particularly active on social media, but tonight he felt like catching up with old friends' posts. The usual memes, vacation photos, and political rants filled his feed. Nothing out of the ordinary. He clicked on a link to a funny video and laughed quietly to himself, the sound breaking the silence of his small apartment. Then, a notification popped up. A new message. He frowned, glancing at the screen. The sender's name wasn't familiar. Jason, 87. Curious, Mark opened the message. It read, "Enjoying the movie?" Mark blinked at the screen, confused. He wasn't watching a movie. Not yet, anyway. His plan was to start one in a few minutes after finishing his popcorn. Shrugging, he assumed it was spam or maybe a random joke from someone who'd messaged the wrong person. He typed back, "Not yet, but planning to. Do I know you?" The response came almost instantly. "The popcorn smells great." Mark froze. His eyes darted to the bowl of freshly popped popcorn sitting on the coffee table in front of him. A chill ran down his spine. Who was this? How did they know he'd made popcorn? "Who is this?" he typed, his fingers trembling slightly. There was no immediate response this time. The seconds stretched into minutes as Mark stared at the screen, his heart pounding in his chest. He got up and walked to the front door, making sure it was locked. Then he checked the windows, his paranoia creeping up with every step. The laptop chimed again. Another message. "You always forget to lock the kitchen window." Mark's breath hitched. He spun around and sprinted into the kitchen. Sure enough, the small window above the sink was slightly ajar, letting in the cool night air. Mark slammed it shut and locked it, his hands shaking. His mind raced with possibilities. Had someone been watching him? He picked up his phone and dialed his best friend, Ryan. "Dude, something's going on," Mark said as soon as Ryan answered. "I'm getting these creepy messages on Facebook. Someone's watching me. Are you sure it's not a prank?" Ryan asked, his voice skeptical. "I'm sure," Mark snapped. They knew about the popcorn. They knew the kitchen window was open. "All right, calm down. Do you want me to come over?" "Yes, please," Mark said, glancing around nervously. "Be there in 20. Mark hung up, feeling slightly reassured. He returned to the living room and sat down, staring at the laptop screen. Another message appeared. "Calling for backup won't help." Mark's stomach churned. The sound of his doorbell shattered the tense silence. Mark jumped, his heart racing. He grabbed a heavy metal flashlight from the shelf near the door before approaching cautiously. "Who is it?" he called out. No answer. The doorbell rang again, longer this time, as if someone was pressing it deliberately. Mark peered through the peephole, but saw nothing. The hallway outside his apartment was empty. He backed away from the door, his grip tightening on the flashlight. His phone buzzed on the coffee table, startling him. He snatched it up, hoping it was Ryan. It wasn't. It was another message. "Why don't you open the door?" Mark's hands shook as he typed back. "Who are you? What do you want?" This time, the response was chilling. "Look behind you." Mark spun around, his flashlight beams sweeping the room. It was empty. His apartment was small, just a living room, kitchen, bedroom, and bathroom. There weren't many places to hide. He moved quickly, checking every corner, every closet. The bathroom was empty. So was the bedroom. But when he returned to the living room, he noticed something that hadn't been there before. On the coffee table, next to the popcorn bowl, was a single photograph. It was of him, sitting on the couch just minutes earlier, staring at his laptop. Mark's blood ran cold. He grabbed his phone and dialed 911. "This is Mark Anderson. I'm at 213 Willow Lane. Someone is in my apartment or watching me. Please send the police." The operator tried to keep him calm as he explained the situation. Mark barricaded himself in the bathroom, clutching the flashlight like a weapon. He could hear faint noises now, soft creaks and the occasional thud, as if someone was moving through the apartment. The operator assured him that officers were on their way, but every second felt like an eternity. The sound of the front door creaking open made Mark's heart leap into his throat. He held his breath, listening intently. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving through the apartment. Mark gripped the flashlight tightly, ready to fight if he had to. The footsteps grew louder, closer, stopping just outside the bathroom door. And then, silence. The knob twisted. "Police!" a voice shouted, followed by the sound of a struggle. Mark burst out of the bathroom to find two officers pinning a man to the floor. The intruder was disheveled, his face obscured by a hood. Beside him lay a phone, open to Facebook Messenger. The police later told Mark that the man had entered through the unlocked kitchen window and had been hiding in the apartment for hours. He had been sending the messages from his phone, watching Mark through the open spaces of the apartment, and snapping the photo when Mark was distracted. The intruder's intent was never fully explained. He had no weapon, no stolen belongings, just an unnerving obsession with watching his victim. Mark moved out of the apartment the next week. To this day, he refuses to keep his Facebook profile active, and he always double-checks his locks. Because some nights, when the wind is just right and the world feels quiet, he swears he hears the faint chime of a Facebook message. And there you have it. 3 chilling tales of domestic horrors that remind us just how fragile our sense of safety can be. Whether it's an unexpected noise, a mysterious open door, or an intruder lurking in the shadows, these stories prove that sometimes the scariest things aren't supernatural, they're all too real. If you enjoyed these stories and want more spine-tingling content, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who loves a good scare. And if you haven't already, Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. We've got more terrifying tales, true stories, and dark mysteries coming your way. Before you go, let us know in the comments. Have you ever had a creepy experience at home? We'd love to hear your story. Thanks for watching, stay safe out there. And remember, sometimes the scariest thing in the dark is what you can't see.